Today I'm joined with Travis, Exly, Luke, and I, and we're going to be talking about the book Fahrenheit 451. It is a book written after the Cold War, and in the book, the main character, Guy Montag, works as a firefighter, but instead of firefighting, he burns books and all other forms of literature. As the book progresses, Montag questions his job and the rest of society on the true reason for burning books. In the response to the suppression of the books, Montag ends up burning his boss, evades the police, and runs away to a group of people called the Book People. In this group, Montag, as well as the fellow book people, work to preserve the books and literature inside by memorizing pieces of literature. Are there any rhetorical strategies that stood out to you guys?
Yes, there are. So one of the most prevalent rhetorical strategies Bradbury uses is symbolism, when he states, "I sometimes think drivers don't know what grass is, or flowers, because they never see them slowly. If you showed a driver a green blur, oh yes, he'd say, that's grass." And in this quote, Bradbury essentially compares the drivers and how their speed to life, and then the grass to people's memories, essentially. And in doing so, he says that people are not appreciating their lives to the fullest, and they're constantly speeding by their lives, essentially, and not truly taking in the moment and always looking towards the future when they should be living in the present.
He also uses biblical allusions. He talks about the Tower of Babel when he says, "None of those books agree with each other. You've been locked up here for years with a regular damned Tower of Babel." In this, he's basically saying that books are dangerous. They confuse the mind, just like in the Tower of Babel story. They confused the language. So there's a little juxtaposition there. Books confuse people. Even though we know that in society today, books are meant to bring knowledge to people and not confuse people.
Bradbury also utilizes rhetorical devices in the metaphor. A book is a loaded gun in the house next door. Burn it. Take the shot from the weapon. For each man's mind, who knows who may be next target of the well-read man. And this metaphor is essentially comparing a book to a gun. And it's saying that books are dangerous as guns are dangerous. And it's meant to show the oppressive nature of the government as they're sparking fear into the reader's minds of books and taking away people's rights to read and truly learn what they want to.
How does the character change over time?
Guy Montag's character, his whole character arc is that he changes from being a fireman whose whole job is to burn books to being an advocate for books. Throughout the book, he goes through this process of changing into a person that questions the government, questions the things that happen in the government, where before he never really thought about that.
Now, actually, let's talk about the ethical issues discussed in the book.
Okay. In Fahrenheit 451, Bradbury shines light upon the ethical issues regarding censorship in media and the role a government should play in civilians' lives. In Fahrenheit 451, the government is very totalitarian as it controls what books the civilians can and cannot read. And this creates an ethical dilemma in which the reader questions whether or not the government should have this much power over civilians' lives or whether they should not. In this case, it is evident that the government should not have this much power, as the civilians in the book are ultimately unhappy with their lives.
Now, Travis, let's talk about the theme.
The theme of Fahrenheit 451 is the dangers of totalitarian governments. Totalitarian governments, as we know, throughout history, have been very evil. And there's many correlations between the government that's described in Fahrenheit 451 and totalitarian governments that are in real life. There's obviously the censorship, like we talked about. There's book burning, like we already talked about. These just show totalitarian governments are bad. And the author wants us to advocate for democratic principles within society. Obviously, this was written in the Cold War era, where communism was a scary thing, and people were scared of the censorship that communism brought about within society. So basically, Bradbury wants to advocate for democratic principles within his book by warning against the dangers of a totalitarian regime.
Thank you all for watching. This episode is sponsored by The Pitch, a student-made podcast, including me, Hendrix, Dimitri, and Exly. And this is our setup. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram at Long Beach Pitch.
Thank you.